Commission had gotten to a point whereby I felt that I had no more contribution to make because I only had one vote. And the more we continue voting on issues that are fundamental, the more I realize that as long as Chairman Chebukati continues to have only 2 votes, we cannot make progress in the Commission. We cannot guarantee a credible process come the 26th of October.
All right. What are your reasons for for the Commission not being prepared?
I mean, I've just explained to you bits of that. You may recall that one of the reasons why the last election was invalidated was because we had not obeyed the court order of providing access to the servers. The Commission, under the leadership of the chairman, the plenary, decided many weeks ago to have that system audited, to have the servers audited. Up to date, that has not happened. We are moving into an election using the same technology with the system that has not been audited, the past that is for the 8th of August, and the future one, the quality assurance that we had wanted to do, has not been done yet. If you are not able to answer the questions that were raised on the 8th of August regarding the servers, how can you say you're prepared to then proceed with the election using those same servers? You know, we've worked hard on material on this training. I've spent many months on weeks working with our very able staff to come up with the material for training. But when I visited Bondo, I visited Kisumu, I visited Homa Bay, and I realized what we were doing was that because of the fears that we were going to have our staff attacked, we had started reducing the time that we were going to be spending on the training of presiding officers. So if you are not going to be able to spend enough time to train the presiding officers because of safety and security concerns, then how are you going to ensure that the same mistakes that were done by presiding officers on the 8th of August are not repeated?
All right.
So those are some of the issues really that I have been raising, and I have raised them formally with my colleagues. It's not that I'm doing this without having talked to them. I had raised these concerns, my concerns, in 2 memos to my colleagues and to the chairman.
All right, Roselyn, and what would you say is the straw that broke the camel's back? You mentioned that you feel that you're no longer adding value or you're not contributing, as it were, to the Commission. What is it that made you reach that breaking point?
You see, when every important issue that you have to deal with at the Commission, you have to vote, then there's no value you have anymore, because it means you cannot have any serious discussions, for instance. You cannot discuss and say, look, we are having a situation in which we are having threats to the security of our staff that we are training, especially for me when I visited the field. And I came back and I said, these are the concerns we have. Can we delay the training so that we can be able to secure the places, so that we don't put the lives of our staff at risk? And you find people still do not see that as something that is reasonable. So what I'm asking myself is that we are ready to go into an election, even if it's going to cost the lives of our staff and voters. Is it an election at any cost, or it must be an election that is credible and that meets the requirements that the Supreme Court has put forward for us?
In your opinion, what do you see that is required to be done, and what time frame are we looking at for the Commission to be ready if they were to go by your advice? You're on the inside and you know what's pending, what needs to be done. What would you say is lacking, and what time frame would we be looking at?
You know, fixing a problem starts with acknowledging that there is a problem. But when you have situations, and you have seen it when our CEO himself has gone on air to say that the Supreme Court had erred, or that the documents they were looking at were wrong. So if you do not acknowledge that you have a problem, how can you then fix it? But for me, fundamentally, that what we face in the country right now is a huge political crisis. It's a political crisis that needs to be resolved in a political manner. Throwing it to the Commission and expecting that the Commission that is under siege will be able to fix a political problem is a mistake. We as Kenyan people have to come together and try and find ways of resolving this political problem. It cannot be fixed by the Commission as currently constituted. It just cannot happen.
All right, and on your interview with BBC, you mentioned that you may not feel safe to be in the country. So should we take it that you possibly would not be coming back to the country soon?
To live in that country, you know very well that we had our own staff murdered, brutally murdered, 9 days before the last election. We've not had any explanation. So when somebody says they fear for their life after threats that have been received that are similar to those that I had seen on the phones of Chris Nsando, I have no reason to feel safe. I have never felt safe. I've said this before. I have had threats to my brother who had to flee the country. So obviously, when I have said the sort of things that I have said today and in my statement, I don't expect that I'm going to be receiving a red carpet when entering the country. So I do not want to I'm not suicidal. I'm not going to put my life at risk. I will continue playing my role in whichever way I can as a Kenyan citizen, a constructive role as a Kenyan citizen, but I do not feel safe to be able to come back to my beloved country.
Right, and well, you basically, what are your thoughts? You've mentioned that it is a political crisis, and you've also mentioned that in your statement. And you've also mentioned that the IEBC is under siege. What are your thoughts on NASA's demands that the CEO and some of the commissioners basically are the ones who are the problem in the commission?
You know, I'm not here to carry water for anybody or carry favor for anybody. We as the commission have said, some of us in the commission have said that very clearly. I mean, the Chairman Chebukati himself has identified staff that he would have wanted to be asked to step aside. Some of us have reached out to some of the staff and even say, just go on annual leave. Go on annual leave. You don't have to take. We're not holding you responsible. We're just asking you to take leave. But they have refused. So when you have staff who refuse to even take annual leave so that they can pave way for Kenyans to have confidence in the system we are having in place, then you ask yourself, why? Why would you not want to take leave? What is it that is so fundamental that you are doing that you cannot even step aside or move or go on annual leave to allow the process to look credible? So this is not just another demand. It's a demand that some of us have been making within the commission that has fallen on deaf ear, or that we have found ourselves in a situation whereby whenever the chairman puts that motion to vote, he loses because he does not have enough members in the commission.
All right. You've also mentioned that you basically, with the commission under threat, you've also mentioned, previously you've also mentioned that your life is under threat. Have you reported this possibly to the police?